Hi, everyone. My name is Geoff Stocking. I work at the Russell Museum, and I'm sitting here with Eileen Laskowski, and we're going to talk about our ArtConnects exhibition that was put together with the CM Russell Museum staff and the Great Falls Public School art faculty. So, Eileen, if you wouldn't mind just giving us an idea of what you do at the museum, kind of your background there, some ideas of how you work as an artist.
My job at the museum is education and programs manager. So I work in a lot of different ways in educating the public about the collection that we have here at the museum and about Charlie Russell. I have a background, a degree in fine art from St. Mary's College in Notre Dame, Indiana, and I have emphases in printmaking, specifically etching and bookbinding. They're kind of very dead and / dying arts, but those sorts of things fascinate me. So my emphases are in printmaking and drawing. Drawing is my absolute favorite way of communicating. And so my artwork tends to be drawing based art, and I really find beauty in people as subject matter. So I focus on portraiture and figurative art.
So what inspires or influences you when you make your art?
I think, well, two things, and I don't know which one to start with first, but one is art as communication. So for me, I've always considered drawing as my strongest voice. In terms of communicating as people, I can, talking is fine and writing is fine. But when I really want to express something, I feel like if I draw a picture of it, then that's when I can really say what I mean. It's like you almost like in words, you can describe something, and in writing, you can describe something, and someone might pick up on it. But if you have the ability to put your thought into an image, it's like almost like when people see art, they see what you mean. The other thing is like the written word. Like I'm really inspired by words and how they convey meaning. And like I'm really influenced by poetry and also lyrics and music. And I've always had the ability to draw, but I always like have this thought that if I could trade in my drawing talent for another talent, it would be the ability to like write and play music, because I think in a way I'm kind of like almost envious of the fact that people can put into words how they feel, like, and so I'm really inspired by words, and I'll take the words and then make a visual image of it, because that's how I can say it. So I'm really inspired by lyrics and words and poetry.
The number of pieces that I've seen of yours, it seems like you kind of incorporate both of those, drawing and written word. Is that something that's common in most of your pieces?
Yeah, it pretty much is. Like I think I also see a lot of beauty in raw things. Yeah, like I kind of have like an idea, and it's either like a written text-based idea or like a sketch, and sometimes they come together on the same page, and that's the artwork. And it's like, I think the criticism I received for my art is it being unfinished, but for me it's like as soon as it gets to the point where it's that message, I don't really need to like belabor it with color or additional paint layers, because I've said what I want to say. Like sketchbooks are really important to me, and I've always written and drawn my sketchbooks are really heavily written in. And sometimes I wish I had a way of like just taking that, like short of just putting that out for people to look at, because that's kind of what is the art for me, is like in a very raw form. And so I think a lot of my artistic journey has been trying to kind of formally, if you will, present like the drawing and the writing together as one. The piece in this exhibition it started as actually just a thought I had, like a written thought that was like not feeling like you want to, not being able to necessarily communicate things. So it's like the only thing that's rarely seen is what lies within the in between, and that's like what's in your head. And so then I made like a visual drawing of, you know, a woman, but it's myself, because I use myself as a reference a lot, and just with a split head, and that like separated with this like this dark abyss in between. And so that drawing is kind of formulating that written thought as like a visual communication. And it was like the first time I've kind of like formally paired a drawing and a writing together, and I just wrote at the bottom of the drawing. And so that's kind of the ongoing process.
Yeah, that rawness that you're talking about, that kind of goes back to simplicity, sometimes having the strongest message, right? You don't need to go past it if it gets your message across, right?
Right, exactly.
So maybe you've already talked about this a bit, but about your a little more in depth of your creative process and how you go from start to finish on the drawing.
I think a lot of my process is like remaining in my own thoughts and kind of coming up with ideas first. I really value quiet in order to kind of formulate concepts. I do write almost daily, whether it's in a sketchbook or I have a journal that I just carry with me everywhere I go. So if I have a thought or if something strikes me during the day, I'll write that down. The writing is kind of like, it's like a written note to myself of what the drawing is going to be. So it's like I start with that, and then later I can make a sketch of it, and then I'll go from that sketch to making like a full drawing or a full painting of it. But even my paintings end up pretty much like drawings, just with like a layer of loose color over them, because the drawing is actually what's really important to me. So the process, I guess, is finding that baseline thing that inspires me. And a lot of it's based in like my personal everyday life, and then taking those words and then starting with that as like a springboard for like, what is the image that I want to draw? So a lot of times, like sometimes it will just be a portrait or a person, but other times like I'll use like kind of a little bit of figurative abstraction where I put like multiple bodies together or faces together to kind of express that idea.
Does being an educator influence you as an artist, or vice versa?
It 100% does. I think it really does. I've worked with a lot of youth in my job in the art classes here at the museum, as well as doing outreach programs and going to schools. And one thing that really inspires me about children and young people and how they make art is how brave they are. And I think that's inspiring to me, because a lot of my art is about being brave and saying what I really want to say. And, you know, even as an adult, I'm not sure I'm super successful at it. So I see these young kids, and they're so fearless with what they do. And so like, it's not only in subject matter, but I think more so in like artistic approach too, that I'm really influenced by them. And I guess, for example, like I'm very methodical and calculated in how I draw. Like if I really want to make a likeness of somebody, it will take me a long time to make a drawing. And I'll really focus on it and spend many hours. I don't even know how many hours because I keep going back to it until I feel like the person is looking back at me. Like when I feel like that person is looking back at me, like I'm not a hyper realistic drawer, but I'm a realistic drawer. And so when I see them looking back at me, I know it's done, but I'll work on it and kind of perfect it and like move really slowly on it until I see that person, and then I can be done. That process is important because to get a likeness, you have to utilize those keen observation skills and take your time. But at the same time, there's kind of this balance that if you take too long or spend too much time, you're actually not producing, you're not learning because you're being too careful. You're like self. And so I don't think I give myself a lot of room to make mistakes or to be okay if a drawing goes bad. And I just have to accept the fact that this drawing isn't what I thought it would be and just place it aside as learning and move to the next drawing. With children, what I'm really inspired by is their fearlessness in using supplies and their approach, because they just go for it. They just go for it, and if it's not good, they know it and they throw it away, and if it's good, they love it and they keep it. And it's like, almost as an educator, I don't need to tell them if it's good or not, and I don't know if you really can say if art is good or not. I mean, you can, and it's like, but at the same time, it's like, who am I to say? And so really, they kind of do that process on their own anyway, and I think they do it more fearlessly than adults. And so that's really inspiring to me.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to young people or aspiring artists?
When it comes to the arts and being creative, it's not like you're saying, I'm going to be a doctor, and everyone like applauds, right?
Yeah.
It's like people are more vocal, I think, about people are more vocal about the adversity that you're going to face. And that vocalness can really wear on a person. Or if you are like met with, a lot of adversity or naysayers, I think my bottom line is to be yourself. And it's like, nobody knows that you can do it better than you. And so I think my advice would be like to never let what you think, who you think you are, or what you think you're capable of be dictated by anyone else but yourself. And I think that's then when you figure out how to make it work. I think like one quote that really inspires me in kind of moving forward in like art and what I do is DJ McKay, who was a docent here, who passed away. She had the Desiderata poem memorized that was written by like Max Ehrmann and I think like the early 1930s. And one of my favorite, well, I have a lot of favorite lines from that poem, but she had it memorized, and so it inspired me to memorize it. And one of the lines is, keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. And I've always taken that to mean if you just stick with yourself and do what you know you're good at, no matter how times change, you will always have a job. You will always be able to support yourself because you'll have the know-how. Young people should listen to themselves, and because you're your own judge of what you can and can't do and what you want and don't want and what your boundaries are and what you're capable of. And I think a lot of times we think we're less capable than we actually are. We don't give ourselves enough credit. And so a lot of times you can, whatever you think you can do, double it at minimum. And then that's what you can actually do.
Well, thanks, Eileen, for sitting down and talking with me today and answering some of these questions. And really appreciate your time and your artwork in the exhibition and the time to help organize the whole exhibition in general. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It was fun to answer these questions, so I appreciate it.